Hello, welcome to Airsoft Pro Tips. Alright, so in this episode we're going to be talking all about Special Forces. Now, what do I mean by Special Forces in Airsoft? Special Force teams in Airsoft are normally small 2 to 4 man units who split off from the main force in order to either achieve their own objectives or to disrupt the enemy. So let's take an example of a regular skirmish. You've got your main force of troops, which may be probably the majority of the players, less maybe a couple of sniper teams and things, who are going to be going after, say your main objective is to capture a fort right in the centre of the play area. So you've got your main force moving in, attacking that fort. Now, of your main force you're going to have possibly some flanking, some doing different things, but your Special Forces team is there and they've got much more time because they are going to be independent for the most part of the main force. So as you've got all of your team moving in, flanking left, flanking right, trying to pinch them in, completely scattering fire all over them so they don't know where the shots are coming from, you've got your 4-man Special Forces team who can spend lots and lots of time moving all the way around the borders, all the way around the back and attacking them from behind, so they got even more disruptive fire coming their way. Or alternatively, some skirmish sites and milsim sites will ask for volunteers to be a Special Forces team and they'll give them separate objectives. So for example, we use what we said before, fort in the centre, main force has to capture the fort, but the Special Forces team have a flag which is on one side which they have to go and pick up and bring back before the end of the game. That's an example of how Special Forces are used. So, the kit then. Lots and lots of different kit available, especially Special Force related one. You can go for the SAS look, you can go for the Navy SEALs, the Delta Force look, all kinds of different things are available. But I would warn that seems to be a little bit of an issue around kit on the skirmish field. Now, the majority of players will be absolutely fine, doesn't matter what kit you turn up with, they won't bat an eyelid, because in the end of the day, having a different kit shows your individuality to a certain degree. And, you know, if you've got lots of different kit, it doesn't really matter. However, some will complain, and they'll find things that are wrong with your kit, and they'll come up to you and say, oh, well, you know, that's not the real body armour that they would wear. And you say, I don't care, or something along those lines. But what can you say? But also there seems to be a little bit of negativity about some of the kits because of what they represent. Like for example, Spetsnaz kit, I've worn that a couple of times, but I know other people have had, I've not had any issues personally, but I know I've had other people had issues where someone would come up to them and say, oh, Russian Special Forces, you know what they're like, and things like that. But doesn't happen very often, but it's just a little word of warning if you're going to go for these kits. Now, I have had people come up when I'm wearing my SAS kit and say, well, the black kit that you can see now, and say, well, you know, you do know what that's representing, and things like that. So, like I say, not a big deal, but just a little bit of a word of warning if you're going to go for these actual Special Forces kits. Other than that, go for something generic. Lots of operators wear different bits of kit. They wear a different top with a different trousers to kind of mix up who they, well, so in the end of the day you're not going to be wearing stuff which is really obvious who you are. You want to mix up your kit in that kind of Special Forces operators often mix up their kit so they don't give away who they are. So we've talked about kit a little bit. Like I say, there's lots on the market, but what specifically do you want for this kind of play? And we'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so we're about to be dispatched as a Special Forces unit. Now there's a few things we need to bear in mind because we don't want to be heard until we're ready to make ourselves known. So, high cap mag. Really loud, they shake a lot. Get rid of that. Get a nice quiet mid cap. On the same token, spare ammo. Don't want that, it shakes, it's too noisy, get rid of it. Handgun, nice blinged out 1911, too shiny, get rid of that as well. Knife, we want these, we want to be making nice quiet stealth kills whenever we can. Whether we can make them or not, that's a different story, but we want them just in case. Also, silencers. not every weapon can accommodate a silencer, and not every weapon a silencer actually makes a difference to. But to a lot of blowback weapons, a lot of ones where the main noise comes from the muzzle, fantastic bit of kit to have. Comms equipment. We've got the headsets, we've got the microphones. 2 reasons. We're going to be in touch with our commander, who's going to be letting us know what we need to do, whether we get special objectives, where we need to be flanking to, where we are going to be in best position to take out the enemy. Also, shiny things. Rings, things like this, studs, they all shine. From up close, you're probably not going to see much difference. At a distance, it does make a big difference. Get rid of them if you're going to be doing this kind of special forces covert stuff. Okay, so rubber knives then. Yeah, I know you've heard me talk about these before, but these really come into their own when you're doing this kind of special forces covert play. Now, you may say to yourself, well, most sites have a bang rule where you can walk up behind someone and shout bang, so why would you want to carry a rubber knife and use the rubber knife over using the bang rule? But we'll talk more about that in a second. Now, most sites have a bang rule or a knife kill rule. Now, the idea of a bang rule is if you catch an enemy off guard, you can pop round the corner, shout bang, save yourself your ammo, but more importantly, save them a little bit of pain. Bang! Now, the bang rule is fine, but as you shout bang, everyone in the region, any other sentries, anyone else watching this area, is going to be aware of your presence. Now, another thing you can do, if sites allow it, not every site allows knife kills, is have a knife, rubber knife, ballistic knife, whatever kind of thing you want, providing it's got a safe blade, and grab it out, walk up to someone, knife kill, and you're good.
Knife kill.
Nice and quiet. Okay, so now like we said, there are lots of different rubber knives on the market. Now this one, as you can see, is the US style bayonet, and this one's a little bit interesting because it'll fit on an M4 or M16 in this case, because it's actually got the bayonet lug for fixing it in place. But I've got to say, some sites don't like you using them like this, because obviously having it on the front you can do the kind of attacks that you would do with a proper bayonet, but a lot of sites say that that's uncontrolled, which to a certain degree it is, because in the end of the day you've got less control where you're thrusting as opposed to where you're swiping, especially when all you need to do is walk up behind someone and tap them on the shoulder with it to show that it's a knife kill. But also a lot of sites that do allow rubber knives don't allow direct stabs. They say you have to swipe, because in the end of the day, even though this is soft plastic, that point is still sharp, and against something like mesh goggles, these kind of mandibles, it can actually push them out of the way. Especially with the goggles, you can actually push them off, and then you're leaving someone exposed for a few seconds while they put them back on, and it's really not good. So in the end of the day, carry them, but if you are going to use them responsibly, go for the swipes. There's no need to stab with them. So what kind of other things? Yeah, we've talked about this before. We've talked about ballistic knives. Now, I adore my ballistic knife. Okay, blade fires, it's actually a proper ballistic knife. Sites seem to have a bit of a different thing about them. I've never had an issue where a site which allows rubber knives hasn't allowed the ballistic knife. But if you are going to have one of these, make sure you check first, because some sites, they're well within their right to say, well, it's not really an airsoft weapon, is it? It's a rubber ballistic knife. So check those first. Also, balisongs. Now, I absolutely adore my balisong. These two, i.e. the ballistic knife and the balisong, are the two I tend to carry the most. Now, anyone who lives in the UK will know that these are illegal as of UK law, but because this is a training one, it actually has a soft plastic blade which cannot be sharpened. These are allowed, but you have a real hard time getting one of these, because most of them come in dull metal blades, which you can't obviously bring, which you're not allowed to use on a site. But these soft plastic ones can be a real pain to get hold of. But in the end of the day, if you want to go for one of those, make sure it's a soft plastic blade. But word of warning, they can be a real pain to get through customs as well, because customs will seize them, and then you've got to fight your case to why you want it back. but those are rubber knives for you. So, while we're on the stealth kills, let's talk about silencers. Now, I know I've talked lots about silencers before. Lots of different guns can be silenced, and like I said in the video before, or the footage before, not every gun should be silenced for various reasons. Now, silencers only affect the noise that's coming out of your muzzle. It makes no difference to the noise that's coming from here, and for this gun, this is my AKSU, and it is an AEG. Makes absolutely no difference to the noise one way or the other, because the gearbox is quite loud and not enough noise is coming out the muzzle for the silencer to actually make much difference. Now, in the end of the day, you may say, oh yeah, but that looks quite cool having the big silencer on the AKSU. And yeah, okay, it does look cool, but this has a serious issue, because when it's silenced, it sprays shots literally all over the place. Now, I said in the previous video about some of them dull your range a bit. Well, this one cuts the range of this weapon to about 6 to 8 foot, and I'm not even joking. Maybe one day I'll show you. Maybe I'll do a video where I'm actually firing this to demonstrate, but that won't be today, I'm afraid. So, why? Why is it cutting so much off? And it's simple, really, because at the end here, BBs actually catch when they're firing, hit the very end of the silencer, and it causes them to spray all over the place. Now, occasionally you'll get off a proper shot, but for the majority of the time they're just going all over the place, and I mean literally, you know, all around. Very difficult to keep good accuracy with this weapon. But things like my MP5 actually do silence properly, and having the suppressor on this actually does make quite a big difference to the noise that's coming out the muzzle. Now, I don't know quite what it is, but for some reason this one, I suspect it's because it's got a slightly quieter gearbox. And the slightly quieter gearbox means you hear more noise coming out of the muzzle. And then putting the silencer on it actually does seem to make quite a big difference to the pitch of the noise. Now, any of you who know a bit about sound will know that the pitch differentiates how far the sound can travel. So obviously by having a silencer on there at a lower pitch, yes, okay, the sound's going to be physically travelling further, but at a much lower frequency, so it's a lot less audible. And that's really what it comes down to. Do you want something that's quite loud and goes pee, 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 pee? Or do you want something that's quite a low poof, 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 poof? Because that, like I say, that lower sound, less audible, you're going to hear it less at distance. So, then you also get things like the gas guns, and gas guns do silence pretty well because a lot of the noise you're getting, other than the action, is from what's coming out the muzzle as opposed to anything else. You don't have the unnecessary winding sounds like I spoke about when I did the sniper video. So these kind of things, these are good to silence and they do make a big difference. AEGs, not so much. So let's say, okay, you've decided you're going to go for this kind of play. Few things to consider, but we'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, this kind of play doesn't work well in smaller games with smaller teams. Now consider this, if you've got, say, maybe 10 people aside, so this is your side, these are your enemies. If you then have 4 of those split off, you're then down to just over half numbers. And that is going to make a big difference to the overall game, because you've then got those 6 remaining people who aren't going to be able to hold anywhere near the same ground as you could if all 10 of you were there, just because 4 of you have decided you're going to go sneak round the back and try and do some damage. Now alternatively, in a game with say 20 to 30 players, 4 people are going to be far less missed, but are going to make far more of an impact when you do, like I say, you sneak off, sneak all the way around the back of the enemy forces and hit them from behind. And it can make a real big difference. But like I say, special forces teams, really you should be doing it in either 2, 4 man, maybe 6 or 8 at the absolute most. You really don't want to probably go for any more than that. So like I say, really don't use these kind of tactics unless you're in a bigger game, because you'll be missed when you wander off. Okay, so what kind of tactics work well in this kind of play? Now, naturally, you are down to 4, 2 men, however many people are in your unit. And that is a real issue when you get engaged, because, like I say, you've got your enemy front line. Now, you may be sneaking up behind them and engaging them from the back, but the moment you do, you've then got them turning to face you. And that is, like I said, a real issue if you're down on numbers. So, in these kind of special forces things, you've got two choices. You either go by stealth, or you go by superiority of fire. Now, what I mean by superiority of fire is, I mean hit and run tactics. You appear, fire, full auto, everyone's full autoing, completely hammer them with fire, and then move out, disappear before you have to reload, before you change your mags, before you run out of ammo. Because you can move back, it gives you time to swap mag, gives you time to move into a new position, and hit them again, hit them really hard, then move back again. Now, the reason this works well as a tactic is because you've got very, very aggressive fire for only a very short time, and then you're gone. So, like we say you're engaging your enemies in the centre. Now, in the end of the day, they can't be looking more than one way at once, because you can't look more than one way at once, simple as that. So, if your enemy front line is here, they're engaging your main force, and then you sneak up behind them, all of their guns are turned that way, and you're shooting them from behind. Now, those you don't kill are going to then be turning around, and then that leaves them open to fire from there. So, as soon as you come in, you've done lots of aggressive fire, and you move out, they're going to be completely confused, because you're then going to move into a new position, and do it all over again, and they're going to be constantly harassed. So they can't focus on the fire coming in from this direction if they're constantly having to turn around, working out where you're shooting from. But we'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so like you saw in that little bit of footage, it really comes down to full fire aggression. Now, I was a little bit too quick in that footage, because as you probably saw, my footing wasn't brilliant on the gravel, but like I say, you have to keep those shots going. In the end of the day, you may hit them, you may not, but the point is you've disrupted them, because for that split second they're going to be saying, where did that come from? And that's the idea, because while you've got those few seconds while they're confused, while they're not knowing where their enemies are, gives you time to move back out, find yourself a good position, move as far away as you can, reload, get your gun primed again, then move back in and do it all over again. Now, a few little things about this tactic. First of all, it doesn't work very well when your enemies have already spotted you, for the simple reason that 4-man unit isn't going to be able to go up against a full strength force that already know where you are. Best way to do this is to sneak up into a position until you're ready to start firing, and then make sure that everyone in your team is firing, keeping all that fire going. It's like we said about fire suppression right back to one of the first videos. You need to make sure that you're all coordinated, all firing, full pelt, and then getting out very, very quickly. Don't give them a chance to react, because if they react on you and engage you properly, there's no way that your small force can outmatch theirs. So, that's aggressive tactics, but what about stealth tactics? Now, those can be used as well, especially in 2 or 4-man teams, because you're less noticeable. But again, we'll talk more about that in a second. Not every single game has to be won by firing off lots of ammo. Covert Special Forces teams, such as ours, 2-man units, while all of the fighting is going on over there, we can sneak in behind the enemies while they're distracted and sabotage objectives, take objectives, such as this vehicle here. Let's go. Okay. So this one is the last in the series of team roles. Now, next week we're going to be looking at something a little bit different. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you found it useful, hit like, subscribe. It really helps me out. It lets me know that you want more of these videos and you're enjoying them. And as I say, next week we're going to be looking at something a bit different.